Hi guys, it's Charla from That Girl Cooks Healthy. So today I'm going to show you how to make this delicious Caribbean black cake, also known as fruit cake. My version is alcohol free, vegan friendly, and gluten free and delicious. So these are the ingredients that you're going to need. You're going to need some gluten-free flour, some almond flour. If you followed the blog version of this recipe, you'll notice that I didn't include that, but I've started to use it because I feel that it makes the structure a lot better. Some raw cane sugar, some chopped fruit, some soaked fruit that I've already pureed in advance. Again, if you've been following my blog, you know that I show you how to make it, but this time I've already pureed it in advance. Some browning. I like my black cake to be really dark, so I use a combination of my homemade as well as the store-bought just for this version. Some applesauce, vegan butter, my spices. I have mixed spice, cinnamon, nutmeg, pink salt, a small amount of baking powder, vanilla, and almond extract. And I'm not sure if I mentioned vegan butter, but I also have some vegan butter there as well. So the first thing that I need to do is to combine the vegan butter with the raw cane sugar, and you want to cream that. I'm using my stand mixer for this. I'm only using my stand mixer for the first part of the recipe because the rest of the recipe I'm going to do it by hand, and I actually recommend you guys to do the same thing. You can use an electric hand mixer or a stand mixer to cream the butter and then do the rest by hand because you have a better control of the texture and the consistency when you do it this way. So I've stopped my mixer because the butter and the sugar is pretty much creamed at this point to the consistency that I need it to be, and I'm just going to give a little scrape to the paddle and the sides and just double check to make sure that the consistency is fine, and it looks fine to me, and that's pretty much what you need to do at this point before moving on to the next step. So the next thing you need to do is to add the creamed butter and sugar to a bowl, and then we're just going to add our wet ingredients. So that's going to be like your almond extract, your vanilla, your applesauce, browning, and also your soaked fruit. As I said, if you've been following the blog version of this, you will already notice that I usually show you guys how I puree my soaked fruit, but I'm using the soaked fruit recipe that I've already have on my website, and it's also on my YouTube channel too, so I'll put a link to that as well so you guys can see it. Also as well, if you don't want your black cake to be really black, then use my homemade browning instead. It's really a matter of preference, and the same thing goes for the fruit. Some people like their fruit to be really pureed. Mine is pretty much a semi puree, so it has some texture to it, and I prefer it that way because it gives it a pudding consistency, but it also has some texture to it as well. So it's really, when you're making black cake, it's pretty much what the individual wants and how they prefer to make their black cake. That's pretty much how it works. So now I'm just going to use my whisk just to mix everything together until it's evenly combined and nice and smooth. As I've said before, I do recommend you guys doing this by hand because you're going to have a lot more control of the results of your black cake. So really, you don't really use a mixer for this. You want to use your hands for this bit. So now it's time to add our dry ingredients. So I start by adding my spices first of all. and then I add the almond flour. Again, that's a new addition to this recipe, so it's kind of like an improved recipe for those of you who are already familiar with the blog version. And then I add my flour. So when I'm adding the flour, you're going to notice I'm going to add it in increments. So you don't want to add it all at once, because you're really going to struggle then to mix it in with the wet ingredients. So you add it a little at a time, keep stirring, and then until you get a really like a smoothish type of batter. But don't add it all at once, just add it while you're mixing, and it will make it a lot easier to manage. And then once I've mixed all of it in, then the next thing I'm going to do is just mix in the chopped fruit that I have as well. So the next thing we need to do is to add our cake batter to our pan. So you can see that my pan is already greased, and I've also used parchment paper to line the sides and the bottom of the pan. In terms of the pan that I'm using, I'm using a loose bottom pan, but you can also use a spring foam pan, but I recommend using one of the two. The reason why, it's going to be the easiest way to get your black cake out of the pan. You don't want to be messing around with it too much and playing about with it. So the spring foam or a loose bottom pan is going to be the best one that you can use. It's going to make it 100% easier to remove when the cake is finally cooked. So once I've added all of that batter, I'm just going to use the back of my spoon just to pat down the top, just to make sure that the top of it is even and there's not really any type of inconsistency with the top of the cake. So this is what the black cake looks like once it's done. Mine took about almost 2 hours to bake. So what I'm doing now is just spritzing it with a combination of some red grape juice, some water, and also some optional rum extract. And you want to do that while it's hot, because that mixture is going to absorb a lot easier once your black cake is still hot. So I've removed my cake from the cake pan, and the next thing that I'm going to do now is I'm going to wrap it. But first of all, I need to remove that parchment paper that you can see that's still around the perimeter of the cake, and then I'm just going to get some cling film or saran wrap, as some people call it, and I'm just going to wrap the cake up. I don't really have my black cake straight away. I usually have it about 7 hours to almost overnight in terms of when I serve it. So what I do, that's the reason why I will wrap mine with the wrap, because it will lock in the moisture. And I do recommend you guys doing that. If you want your cake to be really moist, then definitely do this step. Don't miss it out, and just leave it to do its thing for several hours to overnight. So this is pretty much what my black cake looks like. I left it overnight, so I'm just going to remove the wrap now so you guys can see it. I'm not sure if you can see it on camera. I tried my best to angle it so that you guys could see that it still has its moisture, and you can spray it again if you want to, but it really should be enough moisture should be in it from wrapping it overnight. So everyone, that is how I make my black cake. Everyone makes theirs differently, but that's how I make mine. I hope you enjoyed my version of black cake, because I know not everybody drinks alcohol and not everybody also consumes eggs. So I really wanted to make it for my core audience of people like that, and also people who are gluten-free as well. So I hope you enjoy my version of the recipe. Thank you so much for watching the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and enjoy your black cake.